And now to a story on the trail of Kenya's journey to implementing education reforms and the dilemma faced by learners, parents and stakeholders after several legal questions were raised over the rushed implementation. And tonight, the fate of more than 18,700 teacher trainees who joined several colleges in line with the recommendations of the Presidential Working Party on Education Reforms hangs in the balance after Parliament halted the implementation. Serafine Achieng Oma details these twists and turns.
Record whether
the glaring gaps in the implementation of reforms proposed for the education sector played out in Parliament last week, with members of Parliament raising questions over how the recommendations by the Professor Raphael Munavu-led task force were being implemented before coming to the House to be approved either as regulations or as substantial laws.
Not only is it a policy document that has not crystallized into law under Article 95, but they have purported to appoint an implementation committee which is implementing it already.
Nobody, no minister of government can purport to make law or do things that appear to be interpreted that they have made law, because they have no capacity to make any law.
The House opting to halt the entire process of the implementation of the reforms and tasked the Ministry of Education to compile a report responding to the concerns raised. The stoppage of the implementation of the reforms came following a petition by the Teacher Service Commission, which in its presentations to Parliament had argued that by moving to implement the recommendation, the party proposes to take away key mandate and functions of the Commission underpinned by the Constitution through amendment of the statute law. Another issue of concern for TSC is the proposal to lower the entry grade for teacher trainees, where the Working Party had recommended an entry grade of C-plane in KCSE or its equivalent for diploma in early childhood teacher education and diploma in primary teacher education, C-plane for diploma in secondary teacher education with a C+ in teaching subjects, according to documents that were tabled in Parliament. Upon the implementation of the recommendation of the Working Party, the enrolment to diploma primary teacher education has risen from 3,922 to 18,670 from the time the report was launched and in September 2023. The current entry qualification for registration by TSC for diploma graduates in these programs is a mean grade of C+ and above at KCSE, apart from the special needs teachers who need a minimum grade of C-plane or its equivalent. What this means is that among the 18,000 learners who were enrolled in different teachers training colleges in September 2023, the fate of those who didn't meet the grade C+ and above threshold remains in limbo, as it remains uncertain whether they will qualify for registration by the teacher's employer upon completion of their study. In its response to the concerns raised, the Ministry of Education told Parliament through a document that was tabled on Thursday that the responsibility of setting entry requirements for admission to learning institutions is not the constitutional mandate of TSC, but the Ministry. The Ministry also stated that it did not set standards of education and training for those entering the teacher service, but for admission into teacher training colleges, raising questions over whether these two issues can be delinked. In its response, the Ministry of Education also seemed to have acknowledged the costly blunders in the rushed implementation of the Working Party's recommendation.
The Cabinet Secretary and the Ministry has taken note on the concerns raised by the members, and the proposals, as provided by this report, is that there are proposals for possible legislations and amendments, and the implementation of the proposed reforms will not take effect up until when the legislation process through this House will be complete.
Other issues which still hang in the balance include the recently unveiled new grading structure for the Kenya Certificate of Secondary Education exams, which had, among others, proposed that only 2 mandatory subjects be used to compute the mean grade as opposed to 5 mandatory subjects as it has been the norm. It is not clear whether, with the lack of a proper legal and policy framework, the new grading system will apply for this year's candidates as it was previously planned. The other recommendation is the reduction of learning areas for junior secondary school learners from 14 to 9, as well as the contentious issue of the university funding model, which has already been adopted despite calls by members of parliament and other stakeholders to have it scrapped, citing technicalities in accessing it and categorization of learners based on their financial vulnerabilities. The Ministry of Education has put up a committee tasked to coordinate the implementation process, oversee the deployment of a sessional paper on the report by the Working Party, as well as draft legislation for submission in Parliament. Some of the bills being prepared by the ministry include Teachers' Education and Training Bill, Management of Scholarship and Bursaries in Basic Education Bill, Tertiary Education Placement and Funding Bill, among others.
Everybody say Oisovagas.
Safin Acheng Oma, Citizen TV.